Hi, this is Alejandro from Heavyocity, and in this video I'm going to show you how I used the loop designer in Uncharted 88 to write my demo track, Into the Shadows, and talk about the different ways we can approach writing with loops, whether it is quickly sketching out a new piece of music, combining single loops to create entire sections of the track, or making use of Uncharted 88's loop designer to mangle and tweak the loop material to create interesting grooves and textures for your compositions. The way I personally like to think about loops is like having a composer assistant that delivers these cool ideas that I can then mold them into a new composition, saving me hours of MIDI programming and sound production, allowing me to quickly get to the composition stage of the process of writing a cue. I'm actually really interested in learning how you use loops in your compositions, so feel free to leave me a comment below with your experience with them. Let's hear the track and we'll talk about loops right after. Here we go. Right, so the idea for this track was to use the loops in Uncharted 88 to set this dark and dramatic mood, to which I would then add guitar, bass, and piano. For this, I decided to load one of the Uncharted snapshots called Uncharted Briefings. These snapshots are different combinations of loops, some of which have been mangled with the loop designer engine, either by having their tune or speed altered to create this hybrid sounding loops, or by setting a different start time, which would then alter the rhythmic feel of the loop, especially when played in combination with other loops. You can quickly try out these combinations in the designer keys, since those feature a combination of these loops triggered at the same time. Now for this first section I wanted to start with a low loop, and I chose this loop called Abandoned Cabin. It sounds like this. As you can see, instead of letting it play for all 4 bars of beat, I repeated the first 2 twice and then allowed it to play the whole thing. This way I saved the second half of the loop, which is a bit more busy, to coincide with the transition to the next stage. I then added these fragments of loops to add a bit of momentum to the track. The first one, Sneaky Obs, has its start time moved forward. This way I can get exactly the part of the loop that I want when I play it, which is really handy when using loops for a bit of decoration without having to play the whole loop just for those few beats that you're interested in. This one's Sneaky Obs. And that's Snapper, that's the second one. And then the second half, I used this one called Mr. Raccoon to add a little bit of intensity and to roll into the next section, which sounds like this. So this is the whole section on its own. I thought that keeping it simple would be the best way to set up the track and lead to the next section, and all I needed was one low loop and a few other additions to make this section come together. The next section is sort of the main theme, and here I wanted to create a compound groove with several loops. The main one that you hear in the track is called ticking tacking. This loop is kind of like a backbeat that carries the groove in this section. Again, not playing all 4 bars of it, but rather just playing the first phrase and then letting it breathe. This way I kept room to continue building on the track in the upcoming sections. To add some bottom end to the section, I used the low stem of Stumped. And again, using the same idea as the previous section, I'm just playing the first 2 bars twice and then playing the full loop at the end. And then the last part of this groove is the more effectual loop called Rat King. This loop provides a bit of color, and notice how it's been sped down to half speed. That allows me to keep the color of the loop without it getting too busy. And then for a break from this groove, I got these 2 loops, Rat King High, and then Inquiring Mind, which is sort of a counterpoint to the ticking tacking loop. This idea then repeats twice, with a slight variation on the second time on the high loop, and the fact that the low loop now plays all full 8 bars. So let's hear what the whole section sounds like, just the loop designer. When working with loops this way, it's important to be aware of what each individual loop is bringing to the table rhythmically. It's very easy to start stacking loops and end up with something that lacks clarity. So make sure you're going through each of the loops and check how they play with each other. If you need to just mute different notes or just cut some loops short, the result will be worth the work, I promise. Now for the breakdown section, I needed to find a contrast to section 2, so I thought low loops and very sparse, so not so syncopated, to create the feeling that the track is opening up and adding a sense of breathing. Also, for more contrast, I ended up loading a second snapshot called Camouflage Pulses, just so that I could access different loops to avoid repetition. The first 2 loops are Abandoned Cabin Mid, which has been tuned down by over 9 semitones, and the other loop is Sonority Low, which is also detuned by 7 semitones. Notice that Sonority plays only for 3 bars, which avoids the busy section at the turnaround of the loop, as well as having the start time in that long bell-like hit, which gives it a perfect timing for this section. It also provides the 2 accents in the bottom that you'll hear in the mid-section. Then up I have Sliding Uphill, which has also been detuned, and it comes on the second bar of this section. This way I can present the material in a staggered manner so that each loop has its place to shine. Next up on bar 3 of the breakdown is Monster Chew, adding these piano heads. And Scrapegate Mid, to add a bit of texture, which has been pitch shifted upwards in this case. Then on bar 4 I build with Sneaky Ops Low. In bar 5 with Mr. Raccoon Low providing the last hit. Let's hear what this section sounds like on its own. Pay attention to the different sounds coming in and out, and how the staggered arrangement plays each loop at a different time. Check out the keyboard in the loop designer, where you can see which loop is playing at which time. It's pretty cool to see how the different loops contribute to the overall rhythm. Lastly, section 4 is the apex of the track, where the material in section 2 is now developed and delivered in a more exciting way. For this, I had to make a few arrangements. First, our backbeat loop, ticking tacking, now plays on every bar, adding another level of intensity to the section. And the low end is now carried by stumped low, as in section 2, as well as abandoned cabin from the intro. At the same time, I kept the second instance of the loop designer and added 2 loops, unglued and creature habits. But I used them in combination with a stutter engine to add some murkiness and excitement in the track, and are joined on the last 4 bars by knife out. To add a little bit of timbral variation. Let's hear what just the second loop designer instance is adding. And now both instances together create this intricate and exciting groove that carries out the section and sounds like this. And then to finish off the track, I have Inquiring Mind and Sliding Uphill, joined by Sneaky Obs and Ticking Tacking. And this serves as a release to all the build-up from section 4. Writing music using only loop material can be an interesting challenge and a very challenging boundary to set for yourself in order to explore creative avenues for your writing. You're obviously not bound to having to use just loops. You can certainly explore a combination of program material and a sprinkle of loops to add a bit of character or excitement to your rhythmic section. But it's certainly a good practice to explore ways of writing music that we're not familiar with, to see what we come up with. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this somewhat controversial topic, so make sure to leave a comment, and if you enjoy this video, please give it a like. Also, feel free to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications of all the video content, including demos and tutorials on our latest releases. See you soon!